back to another episode of 6 at 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. First, we come to Africa, where in Rwanda, the outbreak of a virus has rattled the government into extreme measures to combat the spread of the disease. From BBC, quote, Marburg, with a fatality rate of up to 88%, is from the same virus family as Ebola. It spreads to humans from fruit bats and then through contact with bodily fluids of infected individuals. In new guidelines to halt the spread of Marburg, the health ministry said no more than 50 people should attend the funeral of a person who died from the disease. End quote. The health ministry is also providing further guidelines to halt the spread of the disease, including limiting patient interaction with family members for 14 days. Most of the fatalities so far have been from healthcare workers. Next, we look to North America, where the Mexican airliner Mexicana has begun to diversify its offerings. They have said that they will begin shipping cargo in some of its planes, whereas before they only had flown passengers. From Reuters, Mexicana, run by the military, restarted operations at the end of last year after the government bought the rights to the brand from a defunct airline. At the moment, the carrier operates domestic passenger flights using the also military-run airport outside of Mexico City as its hub, end quote. This is also consistent with their want to take advantage of the reintroduction of key industries to the United States, as well as production that is moving into Latin America in order to be closer to the nation. Across the Pacific in Japan, the new prime minister has called for a snap election to be held on the 27th of October. This comes on the heels of a leadership election after the previous PM stepped down. From BBC, quote, after winning Friday's leadership election, Ishiba said he would revitalize Japan's economy, address security threats, and clean up the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, whose approval ratings have plummeted in recent months amid public scandals and internal conflicts. Chief among these scandals are revelations regarding the extent of influence that Japan's controversial Unification Church wields within the LDP, as well as suspicions that party factions underreported political funding over the course of several years, end quote. This election can be seen as a vote of confidence in the new government or potentially a reprimand on the previous actions and scandals that have plagued the party. Now to Australia, where housing prices continue to rise, though at a slower rate than previous estimations from across the nation. From Reuters, quote, figures from property consultant CoreLogic released on Tuesday showed prices across the nation climbing 0.4% in September, in line with the 0.3% growth seen in July and August. The monthly increase was being driven by a 1.6% jump in Perth, a 1.3% gain in Adelaide, and a 0.9 raise in Brisbane and 0.2 rise in Sydney, while Melbourne prices slipped 0.1%, end quote. These increases, as well as rent prices, have been seen as one of the key forces driving the steady inflation throughout the nation. Though other advanced economies have begun to cut rates, Australia's central bank has stayed persistent in their attempts to stamp out inflation. In Europe, Austria's elections have shocked some as the right-wing party FPO has come out with the largest numbers of seats in the recent election, that being about 57 out of the 183-seat parliament. From BBC, quote, the FPO has been in coalition before, but the second place OVP has refused to take part in a government led by Kickle. He is by the way, this is not in the quote, he is the leader of the FPO. Now back to the quote. Kickle's main rival, incumbent Chancellor Karl Nehammer of OVP, has said it was, quote, impossible to form a government with someone who adores conspiracy theories, end quote. There was a high turnout of 77.3% as Austrian voters took part in an election dominated by the twin issues of migration and asylum, as well as the flagging economy and the war in Ukraine, end quote. Kickle has not been deterred by the resistance he faces from other party leaders and is adamant that he will not step aside to let someone else lead his party as the Austria PM. South America, where Brazil has been trying to reevaluate its current trading agreement with Mexico, as the two nations represent the two largest economies in Latin America. From Reuters, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, sir, is in Mexico Mexico as part of an official government visit, which will include his presence at Claudio Sheinbaum's inaugural ceremony as Mexico's president on Tuesday. Brazil and Mexico have a trade agreement dated from the early 2000s, which sets the exemption or reduction of import fees for some 800 types of products. The growth of our relationship already topped that agreement, Marcelo Ebrard, Mexico's incoming economy minister, said on the sidelines of the event on Monday. End quote. And if you want to check out any of these articles, all the links will be in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post a Twitter tirade every Tuesday and Thursday. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.